This episode is brought to you by the Financial Technology Report, a leading information source on financial technology companies and solutions. Today, we speak with Pushkar Mukewar, founder and CEO of Drip Capital, a fintech transforming trade finance and facilitation for small and medium-sized businesses. Drip provides working capital solutions that allow exporters and manufacturers to access credit quickly and without collateral, enabling them to fulfill orders and expand globally. Pushkar's career spans technology and finance, including roles at Capital One and Global Financial Services Consulting, before launching Drip to close the financing gap for SMBs worldwide. Since its founding, Drip has financed more than $7 billion in trade, supported 9,000 companies across over 100 countries, and built a global platform backed by leading venture firms and international banks. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Pushkar, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
To set the stage, tell us about Drip Capital, what you're focused on, the type of financial technology solution that you created, and who you serve.
Sure. So, we are essentially a digital trade financing and trade facilitation platform focused on small and medium-sized businesses. We started predominantly with a focus on trade financing. I think globally, small businesses around the world have a lot of challenges accessing working capital because most traditional lending institutions are not really servicing this segment well. And we believe that data and technology can enable us to provide credit access to this highly underserved segment of the market. Over the course of this journey, we've now operate in multiple markets, India and the US being the two dominant markets where we operate in and serve SMBs in these markets. I would say that over time, we've also sort of moved from trade financing only to also now providing a facilitation and a trade commerce platform where small businesses can essentially use our service to procure raw material. And that's actually more of a newer initiative, which we launched about 18 months back and scaling that up.
What would be a good example of a small, medium-sized business in India? Is there a typical situation that you see?
So typically, these are businesses which are either manufacturers or traders. Typically, most of them operating with revenues under perhaps $5 to $10 million, as low as $100,000 to up to about $5 to $10 million. The use case we see is that many of these businesses, let's say they may get an order from an overseas buyer, but they don't have the capital to be able to procure the raw material and process that order. And that's where our kind of a financing solution really helps them. And many of these businesses are either proprietorships or partnerships, sometimes private limited companies. Yeah, and I think it's oftentimes a promoter-run shop where access to capital is one of the many problems which the business owner is dealing with. And we try to make their life easy by quick, easy access to collateral-free finance. Yeah.
So was it the case before that these businesses would have access to, say, a traditional bank, but it would take too long, or maybe the success rate in getting the funding was much lower, but you help increase that success rate?
Yeah. So I would say both. Many of them, even if they get a bank line, it's going to be a highly tedious process, may take them a couple of months, a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth. Also, banks would require them to have their financials in a certain way, which many of these businesses are not that savvy. And I would say the second is that if they do get it, oftentimes it's limited, right? And that's where many of these businesses are underserved. They may be getting some bank financing, but many of the times they are underserved. And that's where we come in.
And can you tell us a little bit about the rate of adoption and the scale of your current company?
We started about 5 to 6 years back. Over the course of this journey, we've kind of onboarded and worked with over 8 to 10,000 small businesses. In terms of volume, we've done over $7 to $8 billion of trade, which we've financed, or now through facilitation. That's a newer vertical where we're also sort of helping facilitate trade. Yeah, and I would say that, we've obviously scaled up, along the way and expanded. While we started with India as the first market, over time, now US has also become an important market for us. And we continue to sort of go deeper in these markets. We have a presence outside of these markets as well. But I would say the focus currently remains India and the US. We have had some presence in Mexico, also parts of Southeast Asia. But I would say that, we see a lot of opportunity both in India and the US markets and going deeper there.
hmm Curious, the US market you would think is fairly sophisticated and would have existing solutions, but maybe your solution just works better. Can you tell us a little bit about your approach to the US market?
Yeah, so interestingly, I would say that was our hypothesis as well. Like, when we started early on, it was more in India and we were focused more on cross-border trade, right? And essentially, when we were working with a lot of these small business exporters out of India, many of them were actually supplying to US buyers. And I would say, I think it was the COVID time when what we saw was that many of these buyers who were already on our platform, they started inquiring about would there be a solution for them where they can get extended payment terms. And that's kind of how the business actually started, because it was more inbound through the counterparties our customers were working with. And as we got deeper in the market, I think we realized that while the US market is somewhat mature, I think it's an extremely large market globally. If you look at it, it's the largest importer in the world, obviously one of the largest economies in the world. And what we see is that we have over time been able to build a fairly unique model where we are servicing US customers with a lot of our operations and servicing actually run out of India, right? Which allows us to keep the cost low. And what happens is that many of the other fintechs which are operating in the US market with a cost structure which is US centric, it becomes almost very difficult for them to be able to be price competitive and be able to profitably serve the small business segment of the US market, which is where the cost of acquisition tends to be higher. And if you have a local presence, then the cost of servicing also tends to add up, right? And because of that, I think what we're observing is that we tend to be very price competitive, much better than most of the alternatives they have. And we're also able to operate profitably, which I think many fintechs struggle with.
And so in the US, are you competing with the SBA program to a degree?
So I would say that typical alternatives which our customers may be looking at would be some sort of a purchase order financing solution. Some of them may also look at MCA, which tends to be extremely expensive. And yeah, some of them may have SBA loans as well. SBA loans definitely tend to be cheaper. However, again, it's limited access, right? I mean, many of them may not be able to fulfill all their capital requirements with just an SBA loan. So we are part of the stack, but oftentimes when they look at other purchase order financing solutions, other factoring solutions, or other MCA solutions, we tend to be very price competitive.
Curious about your background for the benefit of our audience. Can you tell us a little bit about where you got your start and then how you ultimately ended up founding the company?
My background has primarily been in technology and finance, a computer science grad. Spent a number of years in the US as well as in emerging markets. My career, actually, I started off at Capital One, which was sort of a pioneer in really leveraging data to sort of serve underserved segments of the market. This is maybe about 10, 15 years back. Also spent some time in financial services strategy consulting. So I ended up working with a number of banks and financial institutions globally in the US, Europe, Asia. And I think got a very good sense of how these institutions work, and then was able to sort of marry my background in technology with experiences in financial services. And I think growing up, I had seen the challenges which many SMBs have when it comes to access to capital, right? And I think I could combine some of this experience into really sort of building a solution which could serve the needs of these SMBs. So we started I would say about 7-8 years back now. And obviously through the course of this journey now, we've raised over $120 million in equity capital. We have investors like Accel, Sequoia Capital India. We were part of Y Combinator when we started. So that was sort of the investors who came in. And also, I think the great thing has been that, the model has been now validated with a number of debt capital providers who've now kind of joined the platform. We work with Barclays, we work with IFC, which is World Bank. We also have a partnership with East West Bank. And more recently, we onboarded SMBC, which is Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, as an investor. So yeah, I think we've been able to get all these investors along to really be able to scale up the platform and look forward to further servicing the segment we operate in.
And can you give us a sense for the growth rate and where you think the company will be next year?
Yeah, so I would say that the way I look at the company, I think we've had three different phases of the company. I would say that initial phase when we started till about 2021, 2022 was the really high growth phase of the company, right? Grow at any cost, and we were venture backed. So that was obviously the focus. And I think ever since the funding winter sort of started, I think the focus also became on profitability. So I would say the next 2 years was moderate growth with profitability. And I would say about year and a half back, I think again, we've now started accelerating on growth. Of course, with what's happening in the global trade with tariff wars and stuff like that, these are some of the macro things which impact us. But that being said, we've been growing consistently at 30 to 40% year on year over the last couple of years. I think the goal for the company is to sort of continue sustaining that growth. We would look at not just further growing our trade financing business, but really accelerating on the trade commerce business, where we are able to be sort of a one-stop shop for these small businesses and service their multiple needs. Yeah, so that's kind of how I think about the next couple of years. Yeah.
Excellent. We'd like to learn a little bit more about investors. I'm curious the value you've seen that they've brought to your company aside from the financial capital.
Yeah. I would say that we have sort of two categories of investors, right? You have the equity investors, and again, those as well. We've had venture investors who came early on and then really helped us build that discipline around being focused on growth, being focused on product, being focused on technology, building the core infrastructure to be able to scale up the platform. I would say more recently, we've had more strategic investors who are a lot more helpful on really helping us think through how do you operate an institution at scale and how do you become more institutionalized, right? And sort of as you mature from your 0 to 10 journey to now your 10 to 100 journey. On the debt side, actually, we've had another set of investors, right? And those investors, I think credit business is always sort of, you have one foot on the accelerator while you also need to have one foot on the brakes, to make sure that your credit quality is top notch and you are able to sort of build a business sustainably, ensuring that your losses are maintained. And debt investors actually have kind of really helped us think through how do we make risk management core to our business, because that's how you can build a successful financial services or a fintech company which is focused on credit. So yeah, I think they've participated. Of course, some of them are part of our board. And it's a nice mix of investors who are tech investors, who are financial services investors, and debt providers on the financial services side. So you get a good mix of different viewpoints. Yeah.
And a critical element to achieving success with any company is the team and the culture of the organization. Can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy around the culture of your company?
So I think given that, we've been a pioneer in building a trade financing platform for small businesses, I would still say that, we've been a market leader in India. Also, we are sort of unique. We really understand cross-border trade. I think so. Right from the get-go, we've always had kind of an interdisciplinary team. We've had experts from technology domain, but then we've also had folks from financial services who've had some deep experience in financial services. And I think it's this cross-functional nature of our leadership team, which has enabled us to build a unique proposition in the market and be able to scale it up. In terms of the culture, I think personally, I believe that while domain expertise is helpful in some specific areas, I think folks at Drip, if you interact with anyone, you will see that most of them are very, very strong, fundamentally strong first principles thinkers. And most of them are able to look at problems and then really think about solutioning it on a first principles basis. And I think that's really been helpful to innovate. And I would say the second aspect of our culture is that, as a leader, I'm very hands off. I like people who really believe in the mission and who want to take ownership of their functions and almost have like this founder mindset. And those are the ones who progress well at Drip, folks who have a founder mindset and think about not that this is my function and this is somebody else's function, but how do you sort of work together as a team to do what's right by the company? And I would say the third aspect of our culture is just most of the folks are fairly humble and eager to learn. And I think when you're working in an innovative space, just having that kind of a mindset helps the company grow as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
So I think growing up, I've seen my father who, grew up in a tier 3 town in India and was the first in the family to really start a healthcare enterprise. Just his focus and sheer dedication to kind of servicing. And I think he still operates out of a tier 2 town in India where he's been operating for about 30 plus years, serving the local population there. I think that has had a significant influence on me, both from the standpoint of giving back to the society is something which is very important for him. And I think I've kind of grown up seeing that. And the second aspect is just his persistence and, his push towards building a sustainable enterprise and kind of continuing to scale it up over probably like 4 decades now. And I think that just teaches me how large sustainable businesses are built over the long run, right? And I think these ups and downs are very much part of building any startup, building any business, but you just have to be passionate about the mission and, you can keep going.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
So I would say the mission of Drip, I think, is something which I'm very passionate about. I think empowering small and medium-sized businesses to realize their full potential. That's really sort of what is core to our company. Of course, financing has been the first product we've launched and we've scaled up because that is one of the critical needs of most small businesses. But then I think the idea is that how do you make the life of a small business easier and how do you really empower them to realize their full potential? So that's how I would think about it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Pushkar, thank you so much again for taking the time. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Glad to join this and really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.